Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk with Tammy, brought to you by Beacon Eye Resources. Beacon Eye Resources is the most comprehensive consulting company in working with individual, businesses, schools, government, and organizations. For the past 10 years, they have been conducting seminars, workshops, special programs, individual services, and private consulting relating to physical, social, psychological, aesthetic aspects of personal appearance and self presentation. And for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, a little bit about the show. Let's Talk features interesting personalities from all walks of life, sharing bite sized insights into relevant topics. I'm Tammy, your host, a lecturer by profession, a scientist at heart, and Miss Sari Malaysia 2019. My basis for the show has always been about learning from my guests, and I hope you will too. So let's get started. As you can see, as my very, very broad smiles this evening, I'm super excited to bring my guest into the show. Hello, Yang.
Hey girl. Hey Towns. Thanks for having me.
It was my pleasure. So, a little bit about Yang. Yang is my colleague, my friend, fellow lecturer as well, and also a podcaster for young people. And I just want to flex here that I've been on her show. I've been featured as a guest on her show 3 times.
I'm
Yeah.
just excited to finally be a guest on like your show, like I've like look how far you've come. Like
Oh,
you
yeah,
have your own
yeah.
show now. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, yeah.
correct. I remember coming and getting some advice from you before I started the show as well.
Yeah, like you know what? Like I remember like when I begged you to be on my show. It
Yes,
was during season 1, and then like
yes,
you were so nervous too. But sis, I think I know how you feel right now. Like I don't know why I'm so nervous. So, but I'm
yeah.
excited. I'm excited for you. I'm excited for about the topic. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was like, I think this was something that I mean, it was a long time coming. We were planning to bring you on the show, but it was a bit difficult for me because I wanted it to be something new. It is not something that, you probably haven't talked in your podcast at least, because then
Mm-hmm.
it'll be redundant.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think for those of you who are watching, we actually went through this to see if this would be okay, the angle is okay for the topic. So feel free to leave your comments, your questions. It is currently live on Facebook and YouTube. So if the question is relevant, I would immediately show your questions, or we will keep it at the end of the show for a Q&A.
I also just want to add, like, due to the nature of our topic for tonight, like maybe for some people, because they have always been very curious about a topic, or they might not know a hijabi like as a close friend. They might have some questions, and they might feel maybe it's a bit malula or a bit scared, like they might offend to ask any other hijabi out there. I would
Mm.
like to just point out that you know this is a safe space. I will try my best to answer all of the questions about being a hijabi. Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's my
yeah.
consent there.
Yeah, yeah. I think Yang is a really cool person. She would be happy and glad to really open your eyes into things and give you some insights, especially for a person who yeah, like what Yang said, probably does not have a close hijabi friend, or just curious about the mindset and the thought process that goes into being a hijabi.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start with the first question. What are the some of the stereotypes that you've heard as a Malay Muslim woman who's donning the
Mm-hmm.
hijab?
Right.
Some of the stereotypes that you have heard about girls like yourselves.
Okay, so can I just start with a bit of a disclaimer? I forgot to add this in the beginning.
Mm,
I just want to note that I am only one person, and I am a hijabi who who has her own set of experiences, and like whatever I see are all based on my experience and my observation. They might not be all encompassing, right?
mm, mm,
So for the hijabis or the Muslims out there, if you disagree with me, that's fine. But just so you know that I don't mean to generalize or become a spokesperson for the community, right? So on your question, like what are some of the stereotypes that I've heard or faced? Well, it has to be, I think, as a Malay Muslim in this country, the
mm,
expectation of wearing or being a hijabi is that, you know, you're either very passive,
mm,
you're very soft, gentle, you're not so opinionated, you're
mm,
submissive, you're pure,
Mm.
you're you're a devout Muslim, like that means you're a perfect Muslim. That's what that's what I
Mm.
meant by that.
Mm. Mm.
You
Mm.
might not be very ambitious.
Okay.
You're not an alpha woman. You might, you don't know how to speak English probably.
Right.
So yeah, so those are the
Okay.
some, yeah, the stereotypes that I've heard.
Okay, so this is just a fun fact, right? When you say it may not be an alpha woman, uh, this is something like a running joke between us, like as to my first experience meeting with Young, and I've always told and I've always told everyone that the first time I saw Young, I was scared of her. That
I
that
know,
is
I don't get
why.
it. I don't get it, girl. Like, I'm coming in, I'm smiling, I'm like saying hi to you. How are you? Okay, tell the people, tell the crowd, like, why are you scared of me?
Oh, basically, you are an extroverted person, and as an introvert, that scares me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're putting yourself out there, and I don't know if I could match your vibe. That is one of the reason that I get scared with people who are so outspoken, and yeah, things like that. But
Tammy was
yeah,
also sombong, by the way. That was my experience. Like, that's her perspective. Like, my perspective is that you're hella sombong. Okay, I say hi,
uh,
you're like macam, oh, you macam like nodded, and then you looked away. I'm like, sis, okay.
this I was dying inside.
I was like, okay, you'll be my friend later.
Okay, you see the fact that there's a saying, right? Extroverts usually adopt introverts, so I got
Yeah,
adopted by Young, by the way.
I have
So
to say
that's
though, like it is a living of mine. I adopt introverts all the time, and they're
it.
the bestest of friends.
Thank you. So
Yeah.
I wanted to say, I mean, I'm very curious, right? Because when it comes to donning the hijab, there are many variations to it, right?
Mm,
That a majority of them, like, probably will be donning it the way you do, and then some would be, it's like a spectrum, and you
right.
can see how conservative someone can be based on the way they don the hijab. There are
Mm,
more longer ones, bigger ones, or probably
mm,
the kinds, Malay women who will probably, even despite wearing long sleeve attire, they will probably wear a hand stocking inside. So I was
right.
just wondering, right, from another Muslim woman perspective, do you
Mm.
have like a stereotype towards women who are not on the same level as you in terms of those kind of dressing? Do you have like a preconceived notion or some sort of a judgment of anything?
I think because I am, well, first thing first, I think with what you're saying, to me, I look at it as like either like a style or like a
Okay,
process, right?
right.
So if you were to go with like the tradition notion, like the more labo the hijab, that means the more devout that you are. If we're gonna go there, then
Mm-mm-mm.
it is a process, right? Like
Right.
personally for me, I don't really subscribe to that. I think just by being modest, dressing modestly, the fact that you are wearing a hijab, that is already like a
Mm,
proclamation to everybody that you are a Muslim. It is part of your identity. How you choose to wear it, that is also a part of how you choose to portray yourself. So memang
mm,
lah, like if you might think like a woman who wears a turban style macam ala Yuna, you would think, oh yeah, she's a Muslim, but she's a hip Muslim, or she's very
mm,
modern, right?
mm,
And then a,
mm.
a woman who chooses to wear a more labo hijab might be like, or you might think, oh, she's very conservative. But then again, that's just first impressions, correct or not?
Correct.
Right? So,
Yep.
like, I also know there are Muslim women out there who do not wear the hijab, and yet they're very much a practicing Muslim. Like,
Mm,
they really take care of their salat, they puasa, they do everything. It's just that, they might not wear the hijab just yet. And yet I also know there are women who wear the hijab and they're not exactly practicing,
mm,
right?
mm.
So at the end of the day, because religion is so personal, and I'm not saying that I am not claiming that my interpretation of the religion is like the end all be all. I'm not saying that. But I think um just by having these different variations, it's just like, again, I don't think it's a fashion piece, but it is part of your identity, right?
Correct.
That's what you choose to show to the rest of the world. So again, like people like you who is not wearing the hijab, with your own preconceived notions, with your own life experiences, might look at a woman in a turban and be thinking, yeah, she's very modern. But for
Mm.
if you really talk to her, she might be very narrow minded.
Yeah.
She might
Yeah.
not be open to be having friends who are non-Muslim. And then
Yeah.
you meet
That's
a
true.
person like me who wears a really simple hijab, who doesn't really go for all the style or whatever. And I like to think I'm very open-minded. So, it depends on how what is comfortable to them. Like maybe like for you, like wearing a mini skirt might not be your cup of tea.
Yeah.
Maybe pairing a mini skirt with like another spaghetti strap, a bit too much for you,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
Uh, what is a preference thing, right?
Mm.
Maybe the
Mm.
reason why you're not open to like having to show so much skin might have something to do with your own personal values,
Mm. Mm.
right? Or
Mm.
maybe it's just not your cup of tea. So like for some women, wearing a tudong labu is just something that's very comfortable for them, right?
Right.
But yeah lah, like that's on a personal level, right? But we also are also aware that you know because of the way we appear, um there are certain things that you know um how other people perceive us is a whole different thing,
Mm.
right? like
Right.
like
Right.
depending on where you are. Like we know Malaysia is a Muslim majority country. Like as a Muslim person in this country, um where I like to think that certain extent we feel safe lah, right?
Mm.
So like if you choose to wear the purdah and the long tudong, people are gonna society is gonna be a lot more accepting compared to
Mm.
if you were
Mm.
to live in Europe, in France,
Yeah. That's
right?
true.
So that's why I think for you because Malaysian, you are so exposed to Muslims, so
Yeah.
you get to see all these different variations, right? Like how
Correct.
they choose to
Mm.
wear. But
Yeah.
maybe in America or in the West, um, variation is not as easily accepted. Maybe,
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
it's either you're wearing a hijab or you don't. In
Yeah,
countries like that.
yeah.
But I like how you were talking about when it comes to, even the level of the hijabs, right? If you're calling it levels, it is a process and it depends on how you would identify yourself with as to how you interpret the religion.
Mm-hmm.
And it is basically a personal thing because it's a personal relationship with your God.
Mm-hmm.
So I like how this question is like a follow-up question to that.
Mm-hmm.
Jane has a question. So basically, Jane says that, she noticed on social media commenters frequently attempt to advise Muslim women to cover up more or dress more conservatively, emphasis on advice.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your perspective on this?
Oh, I have perspective on that.
Yes,
I have
please
thoughts
do
on that.
let us know. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I don't know. I might trigger the Malay community with this part, but
Mm,
like I understand where they're coming from, but I
mm.
disagree. Right?
Okay.
So
Okay.
so it could be like a Malay slash Muslim sort of culture,
Mm,
whereby because we're all one community, we're one family. That means
yeah.
when you're family, you want to take care of each other,
Mm, mm, mm,
right? But
mm.
this is like to me to a certain extent, it's a bit of an extreme case whereby we are borderlining like jaga jaga tepi kain orang
Tepi
lah,
kain
like
orang. Mm,
yeah, that is like that kind, to the point that in Islam, from what I understand, you know we it is very much encouraged to
yep.
advise
Yep.
our fellow brother and sister,
Mm.
but
Because
jangan
people use
yeah,
that as
but
the
there's
reason.
a but to that. But jangan
Yeah.
advice sampai you menjatuhkan aib orang tu. Jangan sampai you
Mm,
memalukan your friend,
mm,
your friend or
mm,
your family member,
mm.
right? So if you want to advise somebody, you probably take it to the side, like do it privately, right? But
Yeah.
the problem with social media is like, oh, I nak bagi advice, but sis, tudung tu boleh labu sikit tak?
Mm.
Like I'm really against that because you have
Yeah.
no right, you have no place to say that to a
Mm-hmm.
woman. You do not
Yeah.
know like what is the process. For all you know, dia baru start je pakai tudung, right?
Yeah.
To wear the
Mm.
tudung for the first time ever is such a huge thing.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of courage because you're changing how you appear to the public.
Yep.
Second, you are also like, Malaysia panas. you know, like nak pakai tudung, you think like okay lah, right now you feel like macam because I've been a pro at it, I've done it for like God knows how many years. So like
Mm.
you nampak dia macam lekat, macam like it's neat, it's like it doesn't
It's
slide
an
around
art.
because I figured it out, right? How
Yeah.
to keep it
Yeah.
on my
Yeah.
head, and I don't
Mm.
feel hot. I don't feel hot anymore, right? Because
Mm,
I figure out how to put it on my head properly. But for
mm,
any new hijabis out there, it's a
mm,
learning process. Sometimes rambut itu keluar, sometimes it's just
mm.
messy, sometimes it's just like after 1 hour, the thing is falling off, right?
Yeah.
So when you get comments like that, right? They're just like, it basically demotivates the person. It goes against what Islam was trying to do. You want to help people to better themselves, but faham context lah. So
Mm.
if you tak faham context, then be quiet,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Hope for the best, right?
Yes.
So that's my thought on that. Like, so I disagree. I disagree with
Okay.
people like that.
Mm,
Yeah,
mm. Yeah, because I feel like. Mm-hmm.
no,
Yeah.
I
Go ahead.
also on the stance whereby you shouldn't tell women what to wear.
Yeah, because I feel like what you said is true. Yes, you are encouraged to advise because you always advise in private, but I don't think that will get as much as clout as they would compared to openly commenting on someone. And you can already see the basis behind that advice is already wrong. It's like just, for clout.
Like, because there's also like again, I don't know whether it's a verse, it's a um what the prophet said, or I don't know what's the exact term. Again, I'm not an expert Muslim, but
Mm-hmm.
I also feel like, I think for the outsiders, when you're looking at a woman, yeah, how the woman choose to dress herself, that's between her and God. That's her, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if you are not in the capacity whereby you know the woman personally, or you are not the muhrim, you don't know that woman personally, I don't think you should advise. In fact, you should avert your gaze. Just keep
Mm,
on
mm,
scrolling, honey. If you think
mm-hmm.
that's gonna, like, you don't agree, keep on scrolling. You don't have to comment. Like, you
Yeah.
think this is like what? Hello, like, God will know whether you dapat pahala or not, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you do
yeah.
not need to write it in the comment section to get pahala
Correct.
points. It doesn't work that
Correct.
way, right?
Correct.
So
I
that's
mean,
how.
if you were to see that woman on the street, I don't think they would have the courage to go towards her and say things to her. I think it's just because you're hiding behind a screen. They feel like you get all this newfound courage to moral police people.
So this is one thing like I macam tak, I'm a bit like, okay, I might get a bit very feminist here, but I
Mm,
just don't get it, especially with this type of comments. It always come from men. So
mm,
I don't know, like, why do you feel the need to like nasihat or like comment on
yeah,
what women are wearing?
mm,
You know, like I was watching some a YouTube video about a bunch of this Korea, this Malaysian, a bunch of Malaysian students who are currently studying in Korea. They're
yeah,
Malays.
right.
So the girl asked one of her guy friends, and then this guy said something like, and which I thought was very nice.
Mm,
He was like, "Oh, I have a girlfriend. I had a girlfriend, and like, she didn't wear the hijab. She doesn't dress how a Muslim woman would usually dress."
all right.
And then he felt like, you know, um, I'm her boyfriend. Like, I feel I would want her to, to become better. And I know her, right? But even then I stop myself because I have no right to tell her what to do.
Mm,
Like,
mm,
that
mm,
responsibility, if I would like to tell her, like, I'm not her husband. So I can't advise her on what she can or she cannot wear, because
right.
I don't have that privilege yet.
Yeah.
So he like, he had to like check himself to know, like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, kalau if the woman is wearing a bit, it's a bit tak modest, he thought like, well, that would be the brother or the father's been responsibility. So if the father and the brother is like totally fine with it,
Yeah.
then who is he to tell him what to wear,
Yep.
right? I am
Mm,
of the front whereby, like, like, I've grown up whereby, my mom, my dad, like, they kind of check how I wear, and I am out of the family who always breaks the rules, right? So like, they were like, oh yeah, that's a bit too there's a bit too that. Is it annoying? It's hella annoying.
mm,
Right? It's so annoying. But you know what? I still listen to that because they're family, you know.
mm, mm.
It's a relationship whereby, like,
Yeah.
I love you so much, I also want to make you happy, and vice
Yeah.
versa. It's a
Mm,
negotiation. It is
yeah.
never about oppression, it is never about forcing,
Mm,
right?
mm.
So I'm sure, like, even you don't have to be Muslim to
Yeah.
have like old Asian parents telling you, oh, that skirt is too short,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
oh, that top, you should change it. Like, it's a
Mm,
woman, like, it's a culture thing. It's a society thing. It's not a
Mm-mm-mm.
Muslim thing only. Yeah.
Right, right. So, in going back to the stereotypes, right? Have you personally experienced it, like in school or at workplace, as a Muslim hijab donning woman?
Mm, usually I will get it. Okay, it's two ways, right? So in a Muslim dominated environment,
Mm,
especially at the workplace,
mm,
yes lah, like people people expect the women to be a bit more submissive to follow the men, right? But I really don't have to do much in those situations to sort of like for them to know, oh yeah, I can't push Young around, like, oh,
mm,
she's different, you know.
mm, mm.
Because I guess apparently the way I walk also already tell them, like, already it's very like, you know, when you're in the community, pakai tudung is one thing, like, but
Yeah,
it becomes invisible after a while. Like, oh,
yeah,
she's just a woman, look at the way
yeah,
she walk, she's hella dominant.
yeah.
Okay, we need to be a bit careful about her. So like it's very much very non-verbal. It's very
Mm.
non-verbal because like this is basically something that I think the men
It's
in
a
the
given
community
already at that
is a
point,
given.
right?
Like they don't really think about it. They just expect me
Yeah.
to be a bit more
Mm,
submissive, and I think that's a gender thing.
mm,
Whereas like in a non-Muslim environment, which is what I think most of my life, adult life, is pretty much that. Like
mm,
I think I thrive better in non-Muslim or non-Malay environments, and that's
mm,
just me personally.
mm,
Um,
mm,
I do find that like people when I enter the room, because they see the fact I'm a hijabi,
mm,
they don't expect much from me, and it goes back to the
mm,
stereotypes I listed earlier, right? Because they think, oh yeah, she's gonna be very submissive. She's not gonna stand out. She's probably not gonna have any opinions. She's gonna be very timid, right?
mm,
So I'm not gonna bother to even talk to her. So
mm,
I've had like, you know, I'm shameless, right? So like sometimes I'll walk up to a person or I try to join a conversation, and I've had like people who looked at me didn't even bother to give me a glance and just literally wouldn't even let me talk. Oh, and you know
right.
that annoys me because I like to
Mm,
talk. So,
mm,
but they're just like, oh yeah, I don't even bother. Like I don't even bother because wallpaper. It's just a wallflower. She's not gonna bring much.
right.
But often, funnily enough, because I do not like to be ignored,
Mm,
I if there's like a because usually it's an event, so maybe there's a Q&A session,
yeah.
or maybe there's like usually I'm there probably because of something, maybe I'm part of a panel, maybe
Mm,
um
mm,
that's where I try to blow their minds, like yeah, blow their minds lah. And I think like I secretly revel in that.
right.
I mean, it gets a bit tiring of like at this point, but in my early to mid 20s, I loved it. I love to
Mm,
break those stereotypes. And
mm,
then you know what? It's usually instantaneous, like super
right.
instant. Because the moment they heard my voice, the moment that they realized I could speak English,
Mm,
the fact that I have an opinion, okay, sometimes I can be a bit funny sometimes. And then they
mm-hmm.
realize, oh wow, you're so different. And then I get labeled with other problematic terms. Wow, you're so modern for a Muslim, or you're so modern for a Malay, right? Oh, wow, you're so cool. Hi, my name is like, where you're from? Oh, suddenly
Mm-mm-mm.
now they want to be my friend,
Right,
right?
right, right.
Suddenly, like all these people, like now I'm like the center of attention
Mm,
because of those things. Like because I'm aware of the stereotypes, I'm not dumb lah.
mm,
I use those things. I subvert those stereotypes
right.
for my advantage, right?
Mm-mm-mm.
To get where I need to be,
Mm,
right? But I think I'm here tonight to just point out that while I am lucky because of certain privileges that I have, right?
mm-hmm.
Or
Mm,
having the ability to subvert such stereotypes,
right,
the same cannot, like, I can't say the same for other hijabis in this country,
right, right.
right? So because they might not be extroverted, they might
Mm,
not have dominant personalities,
right.
right? They might not
Mm,
be fair skinned like me, or
mm-mm-mm.
have the opportunity to learn how to speak English, right?
Mm-mm-mm.
But they do have like skills. They have ideas. You know,
Right.
they're professionals,
Mm,
but they're just being pushed down. Like they're being
right.
pushed to the background because, like, oh, because she's probably really shy,
Mm.
Like sometimes it's funny because as a hijabi, obviously it's a process for me personally, but
Right.
I get a feeling that outsiders sees this more as a barrier than I see it as a barrier,
Mm.
right? They put up that like, they already decided for us what is halal and haram, if I have to make it very obvious.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
because dia pakai tudung, so like, and she's soft, she's probably soft and gentle. I don't think we should give the project to her because how is she going to present to the board? And
Mm.
there's going to be a
Mm.
lot of men. So, tak
Mm.
payahlah, let's not give it
Mm.
to her. Hello, you didn't even ask her, right?
Yeah.
You didn't even
You're
give
just
her a
assuming
chance.
things. Mm.
Yeah. So like sometimes I find it funny people are so obsessed about what is halal, what is haram.
Mm.
But sometimes you already dah decided for us what is halal and haram.
Correct.
Like look, trust the Muslim. They know, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
obviously this is different lah within the community itself. But I'm talking about inter-community right now. So like
Mm. Mm.
macam and like I would like to take a bit of responsibility here. Unfortunately, the narrative in Islam and also in modern day Islam as well as in
Mm.
this country is
Yeah.
always so much emphasis on the halal and the haram without
Yeah.
really bothering to understand the why, the how, the
Mm.
reasoning,
Mm.
um, being kinder about the whole process because not everybody are lucky enough or have the strength to be devout from the get go. And
Yeah.
and personally for me, I'm not speaking. Again, I'm no expert Muslim, but from my understanding of the religion, that's the whole point. It's a process, it's a journey, right?
Yeah. Mm.
God gave you this journey, which is specially tailored for you. And
Right.
there are days where it's a bit harder to be a Muslim. There are days that you're
Mm.
really good.
Mm.
But the test here, I think, is that as fellow Muslim or as fellow human beings, we shouldn't judge each other's journeys, lah. Just
All right.
stay in your lane. Do your
Mm.
thing, girl, kind of thing.
Mm. Mm.
That's what I think.
Okay, but my question is, right? Like, I totally agree to that. Like, you have to have your own journey. You have to, and everybody's timeline is not going to be the same
Mm-hmm.
in terms of your personal journey with faith and how closely you're going to follow that and how faithful are you going to be to the religion. So, as somebody who is in a Muslim majority country where the laws are also sometimes religious laws, do you
Mm-hmm.
think that kind of like you know have an effect, I mean bad effects on people who want to take this personally?
I'm as I get older, I'm
Mm.
becoming a bit 50-50 on that front.
Okay.
Um and again, I also don't know much about the law or the Sharia
Mm.
law to
Mm.
have a say.
Right.
I see I when I say I'm 50-50 because I see both sides and
Mm.
at this point my feelings are also both sides.
Mm-hmm.
um I understand why there needs to be like laws to keep the, I guess, the purity of the religion.
Mm.
I on that front and am a supporter of that. Like
Right. Okay.
I think what's the point having a real it is an organized religion, right? Like Islam is an
Yep.
organized religion. So like
Mm.
what's the point of being a community? Oh, I have to tread carefully here. What's the point of being a community if everybody is doing their own thing and having their own interpretation and with no sense of quality control. If
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
not, it's just gonna be so diverge, and you've seen it in other other religions also, and the way they don't have like somewhat like a board to like kind of
Correct.
juggle the sanctity of the religion. I am off that front. I think we have to leave it to the experts. We have
Mm.
to
Mm.
leave it to the scholars to ensure
Mm-hmm.
that all of us are still on the same page. And I think
Mm.
from my experience, in my opinion, I feel like Islam to a certain extent has done well on that front.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
um, but then we are talking about application,
Right.
implementation,
Yeah.
right? As an
I think that's where we
idea.
are. Yeah. Mm.
And my late grandmother always shared this one phrase lah with me, and as a kid I selalu tak faham. Tapi
Mm.
she always said like to err is human, right?
Yeah.
Like it's human nature
Mm.
to f things up.
Yep.
Correct.
Yep.
It's within our
Mm.
nature.
Right.
So I think my concern with it is often with the implementation.
Yeah.
Love the idea, implementation sucks.
Correct.
So for me, if for me implementation does not recognize individual journeys.
Mm.
That's the problem,
Yeah.
right? Because we have our good days and our bad days. We have days when we
Right.
are strong and we are days we are very weak and we
Mm.
make mistakes. Again, that is human nature. So
Mm.
for you to be penalized to the point that, we unfortunately in Malaysia is also like like community shaming thing, how is that helping that person,
Correct.
right?
Mm.
I think as a Muslim in Malaysia, I think we need to shift our way of doing things, not so much on punishing, but we have to come from a front of just being loving and
Mm.
understand and
Yeah.
giving people a chance.
Mm.
And I don't think, because when you have laws, it becomes very black and white. It does not
Yes.
recognize human experiences.
Yes. Yes.
It's hard,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
So that's that lah. Like that's how I feel about it.
Mm.
Love the
Okay.
idea. Do not support the implementation of it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's look at some positive things. Jane is asking another question. Are there
Mhm.
any hijabi stereotypes that you like or you think is positive?
I love that. Uh, I love that the hijab is actually an equalizer
Mm.
for me.
Mm.
On one hand, it's also something that makes me stand out. I am
Okay.
different. It sets me apart. So, in that sense, in terms of opportunities, it works well for me. But
Okay.
when I say it's an equalizer and also like a bit of a buffer,
Mm-hmm.
when I interact with the world, um, if I don't feel like explaining to people or like something about consent or whatever, I can just walk, and then decent men, decent men
Mm-hmm.
will already know that they have to treat me a certain way. Usually
Yeah.
that would mean with more respect,
Okay.
right? They should not be any wandering eyes. They should not be unsolicited body touches or like wanting to hug or none of that, right? Because they look at me, they're like, oh, hijabi, her boundary is different.
Mm, mm, mm.
So now I need to check, right? What's her boundary? So to me, and on top of that, I don't know, like when I say it's an equalizer, also it's like because it removes the sexual aspect for me.
Mm.
So people look at me more like they have to look at my face and eventually pay attention to what's coming out of my mouth rather than
Mm.
maybe stare at my cleavage or you know again, I think that's like a positive thing for me lah.
Mm, mm, mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, can you share with us a bit of your experience of, at what age you started wearing the hijab and how was it for you? Because, earlier you did give like a very candid reasoning that, why it could be uncomfortable for people. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be all self-righteous, like, oh, it has to be done because it is expected of me. But hello, it's hot,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And yeah,
So,
and for me personally, right, as another woman, I mean, of course, I'm not a Muslim, but I get
mm,
very annoyed when another man is expecting you to wear the tudung. Like, hello, are you wearing the tudung? No,
agree.
right? So, do you know how hot that would be? You don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think for me, here's where I'm envious of my sisters because I
Okay.
I I come from a family where there's three sisters in this family.
Mm,
And I would say we're practicing Muslim. Okay,
mm,
practicing Muslim family.
mm-hmm.
Um, I was envious of my sisters for embracing the hijab just like that.
Right.
Because in this family, this is where I disagree lah. Like I didn't appreciate the method, but it worked for the majority of the kids in this family. So, but it just didn't work well with me. Was
Mm,
that I don't know? For my parents, it's like okay, if you are already you've reached your puberty, the right next step is to wear the hijab,
right.
right? Because that
Mm-hmm.
symbolizes that you are a woman now.
Mm, mm,
You are the outright now. Blah blah blah.
yeah.
That was all. It was their reasoning was like this is what was is demanded in our religion. This is how it is the right thing to do. Therefore, we should do it.
Mm,
Now,
mm, mm.
I wish I am that. Excuse the word simple. I wish I can just accept that and just go my merry way and work my way towards becoming a better Muslim. But that was not the case for me. I struggled
Right.
really hard, like in my teen years and my early 20s. I struggled
Mm,
really hard because why? Because of the stereotypes that exist or the expectation that comes by wearing the tudong. I possess
correct.
a personality that does not fit with the expectations of the tudong. So for me, I feel like by wearing the hijab, it is almost as if you're toning down a part of me.
Mm,
That was my biggest struggle, right? And you
right.
are tuning down like half of my identity here. The stuff that I
Mm, mm,
enjoy. I can't I love fashion. Can't wear most of the clothes out there. Um I'm so exposed to Western media. I read a lot of English books. I watch a lot of English shows. I hung out with friends who do not wear the hijab. And when I was at that age as a teenager, I wanted to have a relationship. And boys wouldn't look at me because I'm wearing the hijab. And I feel like I'm a bit like, excuse the language, a bit cop block lah. Right?
mm,
Like a bit
mm,
cop block from the whole dating scene. Like I can't be a full teenager because
mm,
of this thing. And then
mm,
like people expect me to be Ayu, but I'm not Ayu. People expect me to be timid, but I'm not. I'm so outspoken. So
mm.
like for the longest time, it was so difficult for me to understand to just embrace it,
Yeah.
right? And it was hard. It was
Mm-hmm.
hard,
Mm-hmm.
right? So yeah, like my teen years was so difficult. And then I went to uni. And then
Right.
like I know that
Sorry, yeah, but you said you were struggling, but you were still wearing it despite not liking it.
I was wearing it for my parents, and I'm gonna be honest here. When I was a kid, when I was a teenager,
Mm-hmm.
if my parents weren't there, I wasn't wearing it, So I was
Okay.
leading this double life, and I know that it is wrong, and I feel so bad for disappointing my parents, but at the same time, it is at the cost of my own self. So I also didn't know anybody who could explain to me clearly or in a
Right.
way that I can accept as to
Mm.
why I have to wear this thing. I
Right.
could not settle with the fact that it is just the right thing to do
Right.
because women memang kena cover their aurat because that's
Mm.
what demanded in our religion. That
Mm.
just doesn't, it was not enough
Wait.
for me.
Mm.
I need to know more. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, at that time, by asking why
Mm-hmm.
is a problem.
Mm.
Right? I couldn't ask it during my sekolah agama. I couldn't ask it to my mom, right? Because she
Right.
was the one who decided for us.
Mm.
um, I felt a bit bitter over the fact that, well, my paternal grandmother didn't have to wear it. She only wore it after my grandfather passed. How was that okay for her? But then for me, I don't have that privilege.
Mm. Mm.
Like I don't have
Mm.
that opportunity to do that. Why is it that my friends who are Muslims, but they get to experience fashion, they get to go out there and be themselves and experience, and I don't get to do that. you know I feel very frumpy in my hijab at that time. Like
Yeah.
really, I feel like I feel so ugly, right?
Mm.
So, and it does not help. It did not help that the fact that my friends also at that time, even though they meant well, but it caused a further confusion in me,
Mm.
whereby when I don't wear the tudung, I get comments. People say, "Oh, you're so pretty."
Okay.
But then when I wear hijab, people don't even notice me. So I
Mm,
didn't know how to like I didn't know how to like combine those two things together. Like so,
mm,
which led me to lead. I led a bit of a double life, and
mm.
then when before I went to uni, then I that was when I first met a Malay auntie who
Right.
explained it so well to me. Like it made sense to me. I don't know
Mm,
why I feel a bit emotional about this particular um um experience, this encounter.
mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
she's like literally she looked like my mom. She's like an average Shalam auntie. And I remember she was working, no, she was the owner of this boutique lah. And
Mm,
then I don't know, I was talking to her, and then somehow we got to the topic of hijab. And she's a hijab wearing lady too. And then she said to me, um, I'm gonna speak in Malay here. And then she basically said, tak apa, nak pakai tudung ni kan proses, right? Memanglah susah. Mula-mula tu memang susah. Tapi kita kena start pelan-pelan lah, right? So macam maybe kita kena first start getting used to putting things on our head first, right? You cannot straight away pakai. Memanglah panas. Memang you akan rasa rimas lah. So maybe macam auntie dulu, I started with wearing a headband,
mm.
like a thin headband. Sometimes I wear like a bow. She said like, I just it's a process.
Yeah.
And then slowly like my headband became wider and wider. Like I started wearing thick headbands. And then after that I started wearing like those bandana thingy because it was in
Mm,
fashion. And then
mm.
slowly then I started wearing a selendang. And then from
Right.
there slowly I started wearing a full one. And she at that point she was already like my mom fully covered. And I thought
Right.
like that is possible. Like I was like,
Mm,
oh my god, that's possible. And
mm.
I thought like her explanation was so kind. And it was so kind because it didn't feel like a
Very
forceful.
judgy. Mm, mm, mm.
Yeah. So I felt like, oh, okay. I think I want that for myself. Like
Mm.
I wanted to wear the hijab. I wanted to be a good Muslim, but it's just
Yeah.
that apparently I suck at it, at that time. So so then I went off to uni,
Mm-hmm.
and for the first time ever I was alone. I was by myself. So I feel
Right.
like okay, fresh start. I'm gonna like, you know, um call the shots and figure this out. And then
Right.
the first year of uni, I admit I didn't wear the hijab.
Mm-hmm.
And I know how much I disappointed my parents, but I was like, I just needed to figure this shit out.
Okay.
So
Okay.
and I started wearing just on and off and off. Slowly, like I did what the aunties told me, right?
Right.
Slowly.
Mm.
Until I had a turning point where
Mm-hmm.
I was in my final year. There was
Mm-hmm.
masa tu I dah macam pakai 50-50 lah. And
Right.
then like
Right.
there was this auntie who like no auntie, there was this lady at the cinema. Masa tu time Ramadan. Holy crap, I went to the cinema during Ramadan. So like I went to watch a movie, but I tak pakai tudung tau. Lepas tu kan, macam mana? That girl, it was a girl, and I think she's the woke Mak Saleh. She was
Right.
aware that it was Ramadan that time. So I was
Right.
with another Malay girl, and we went, and then lepas tu she wished my friend like Ramadan Kareem, like have a good Ramadan, but she didn't wish
Mm.
me because I was wearing a
Right.
tudung. And
Mm.
that was the moment I felt like, whoa, okay, that bothered me.
Mm.
It bothered me that she didn't know that I was Muslim. Was it her fault? Of course not. I didn't have a tell to give it to her, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that was when I realized, okay, it does not sit right with me when people do not know that I'm Muslim. And there was then
Mm.
I realized that being Muslim is so important for
Mm.
my identity,
Mm. Mm.
right? So, and that was when I had the paradigm shift, and I was just like, okay, you know what? I'm going to wear the tudung now. I'm gonna own it. And I don't know, it just became automatic at that point because I
Mm.
finally figured it out, like how to make this work with this personality.
Right.
And
Right.
it was then it became like
Mm.
solidified.
Mm.
And that was my journey. And if you were to ask me like how would I go about it, maybe one day if I have daughters in the future,
Mm.
I think I would follow the auntie who told me that.
Right.
I would tell them like, this is the religion, like this is what is expected of us. It's a symbol
Mm-hmm.
of devotion to Allah.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
it is a journey for you, right?
Right.
So if you nak pakai, pakai. Start slow. That's
Okay.
that because it is what worked for me. But you
Mm,
never know. So maybe my child is simple.
yeah.
You just like, and then it'll be like, Ma, just tell me I have to wear it. I'm like, okay, sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. But just a question, like let's say, for example, your daughter just happens to be, because you see, the fact that you relate to your religion as your identity so much is what made you feel like, okay, you were pulled to wear the tudung, right? Because you want to be even recognized as a Muslim. So what if your daughter happens to be someone who's like, you know, this is going to be my own journey, but I don't think the tudung is going to work for me. Would you be okay with that?
It is a conversation to be had, and so long that
Mm.
I understand her thought process, then I'm gonna be
Mm-hmm.
supportive.
Right. Okay. But thank you
So
so
the
much for sharing.
conversation, yeah, a conversation must be had. Like I
Mm.
need to understand where she's coming from. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Mm.
I love how your journey was so, how to say, it was a very sweet and forgiving
Girl, it was
journey.
hard. It was hard. I'm not gonna lie. It was
Yeah,
like
but I
a
love
lot
how
of
you
years.
you you decided to take a stance. I'm not just going to follow what people tell me. I'm going to explore this by myself. I'm going to go through this journey by myself. And if I'm going to wear the hijab, it's going to be because I want to wear it, not because I'm expected to or because I
Mm-hmm.
have to. Because
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure there are many girls out there who are struggling the same way, but they can't do that because of all the moral policing, or probably they couldn't find that auntie that you had in your
Mm-hmm.
life.
I
You
was
know.
lucky lah. I was lucky lah.
Mm,
And I think it's also God's plan, in my opinion.
mm,
Right?
mm,
It's
mm.
God's planning of how I come to become like this. Right.
Right.
And
Mm,
even then, like, it is still a process. I'm still in the process, to be very honest. Because I
mm,
think the top tier of like the top tier of being a hijabi is when you do it for Allah, right?
mm, mm,
And why am I wearing? It's a sign of my devotion to God. and
mm.
and if you notice, what was my reason just now? It was for my identity. It was not about
Right.
God just yet. And
Yeah.
to be very honest, I'm on the way. I'm
Okay.
on the way to
Okay.
get there. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So, how would you describe your relationship with the hijab at the moment?
It feels weird not to wear it, but at the same
Okay.
time, like it feels weird for me not to have something on my head, lah. Let's just be very clear. But
Mm,
there are times where I don't wear it properly. I probably wear like the selendang, right? Again, because this why? Because it's my identity. Like I want it to be known that I am Muslim. Like I might
yeah.
not be wearing like the proper way, but I
Mm-hmm.
want people to take a look at me. No, okay, she's Muslim.
Mm, 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 mm,
And that was important. That is important to me.
mm.
So yeah, like I it feels weird not to wear it. That's where
Okay,
I
this is
am
a
at right
weird
now.
question, but do you think it's harder for, I mean, at least in Malaysia, do you think it's harder for people to recognize that you're Muslim because you're just so racially ambiguous? Because you don't look like a Malay?
Probably,
Mm.
probably. And then also my name is Young.
All right.
It's
Yeah.
so weird. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, like I don't really care if people can't tell whether I'm like Chinese, Malay ke apa ke. I don't really care.
Mm-hmm.
But I think
Mm.
what matters is the Muslim part. Yeah.
Right. Right. Okay. Because I would look at a woman, and as long as she looks Malay to me, I would automatically assume that she's going to be a Muslim as well, whether or not she's wearing the tudung, right? So that
Mm-hmm.
I'm just asking from that perspective.
Yeah. Personally, for me,
Mm,
like race doesn't matter, but the religion
mm,
part is important for me. Yeah.
Okay. Um. Okay. Go to the Solan Cepumas lah. So your okay, so it's great. I mean, like, is tudung, the hijab is your part of your identity, and I think the ultimate level is basically to be able to wear it out of devotion to God. So, and as a feminist,
Mm-hmm.
how does the hijab fits into your narrative of feminism?
Okay, so like, my understanding of feminism is that
Mm,
gender equality in a sense whereby you do not stop a person from achieving what they need to achieve based on
mm-hmm,
their gender. That
mm,
also means like preventing certain human rights, right?
mm,
Um So it all goes back to the basis of, policing what women wear.
Right.
So if you're a feminist, then the fact that I choose to wear the hijab shouldn't be a problem to you.
Mm. Mm.
What is a what should be a concern for you is when there's another person who is trying to take the hijab off me without
Right.
my consent. That's
Mm.
when you join in the fray, the battle, as a fellow feminist,
Mm.
because you
Mm.
are now going to step in, regardless whether you're Muslim or not, is to
Mm.
help protect me from
Mm.
being forced to look a certain way because
Mm.
somebody else says that it doesn't sit right for my gender or whatnot,
Mm. Mm. Mm.
right?
Mm.
So like, and this may seem weird, and I'm not really sure how I'm gonna go about this.
Mm.
Is that as a Muslim, I
Mhm.
actually believe or look at the religion as a it's a f- Islam is a feminist religion,
Mm.
right? Um, when we talk about equality, that's when where the definition might differ depending on which community you belong to, because I think Islam's definition of equality is probably different
Mm.
than what the general society might define it as.
Okay.
So in Islam, to make it simple, it's from my understanding, we believe that there's a place for everything,
Right.
right? Between a man and a woman,
Mhm.
we both have roles that we need to fulfill because it makes sense for our gender, because we
Mm.
both have our roles, right?
Mhm.
So in that sense, I don't think that by virtue of being a Muslim I am oppressed. I am not,
Mm.
right? I'm lucky enough to have family members or men in my life who also share that understanding or that philosophy of Islam, right?
Okay.
They do not police me. They honestly though, like if you want to talk about being police, I'm more policed by my mom than my than my dad. You know,
Okay. Okay.
like I think it's being a mom. That's a whole different thing. But I don't feel oppressed at all. I will feel oppressed if you choose to take away my right to wear the
Mm.
hijab or
Mm.
to practice my religion, um it is unfortunate that in certain pockets of the Muslim community, unfortunately we do have men who construe the religion and think that they have more right than a woman. I completely disagree with those men.
Mhm.
uh Go f yourself. um but i I I actually feel that, for me personally, the religion really uplift the women's status. Like we actually have a lot of rights, but unfortunately, we live in a patriarchal society,
Mm.
um, a patriarchal world,
Mm.
that gives the impression that a man has more right than a woman. Then I'm like, bro, check your sources. Where did you get this idea from? If you're talking about religion lah, if you're talking about Islam lah, right? So
Mm.
I personally feel like, the religion is actually very liberating for me, and it basically sits well with my feminism. So yeah.
Mm. Okay. All right. Jane has a good point to add on. Basically, because it could be because feminism as a concept has Western origins, so adapting it into the Asian context is necessary, right?
Definitely, definitely. I've always struggled with that. Like, I think even when we talk about philosophies in general, like all these like grand philosophies that we're so familiar with, right? Often memang is from Western origins. So
Yeah.
as Asians, we're like, we love the idea because we're probably colonized in mind, but then
Mm-hmm.
but in practice we realize, oh crap, it doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Right.
more, I think we should all push for more exposure and more discourse about being Eastern, like
Mm.
Eastern values. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And Raymond has a question. What is the one male's perception of the tudung you wish men would stop having immediately? I think you can talk about both, from a Muslim man perspective and a non-Muslim man perspective.
Um, wow, that's a tough question. It's a good question. What do I want them to stop having immediately? For the non-Muslim men, I actually like the fact that um they immediately don't they have a bit of a buffer. They feel, apparently for like hijabi women make non-Muslim men nervous because they don't know how to act around them.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're so scared of offending us. um to a certain extent that's kind of like a good thing, because then already like I get special treatment, like I like to see it that way. I get special treatment, like they will need to obviously check for consent all the time, which is what we love, right? Always check for consent. So like for them to be like, is it okay if I touch your hand, like to shake your hand, again, you're asking for consent. So I think that's great. I think to stop because recently I kind of had a bit of a change of heart and mind about this front, but like don't be scared to talk to us lah. We actually have
Mm-mm.
opinions. We actually have, like, you might be surprised of how we all look at the world too, and
Mm.
for all you know, we might have a lot in common, right? So yeah, that's what I think for non-Muslim men.
Mm.
For Muslim men, here's the funny thing I have to confess. I don't actually
Okay.
know many Muslim men apart from my cousin and my dad and my brother. Like,
Mm-mm.
I don't know that many Muslim men apart from their own stereotypes, which sucks lah.
Right. Mm.
Um, so what would this tell me? Don't stop policing us lah. Keep your nasihat to
Mm.
yourself lah.
Okay.
That's what I wanted to stop having. Yeah.
I think that's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's another comment that you had such a down to earth and honest sharing, and thank you for the enlightenment.
You're welcome. Like, I cried. Was that good enough?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I cried, so I guess that's
Is
down
it
to
is
earth.
it weird to think that there's an achievement unlocked? Like, oh, I made Yang cry on my show.
Oh my god! I was trying to like give you a hard time, but yeah.
But yeah, okay. Okay, I think I have one last question. This just came about. Like, we have women who have internalized misogyny, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there would be some Muslim hijabi women who would think that all the stereotype that you listed earlier as virtue, like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm a woman, I'm supposed to be submissive, I'm supposed to be timid, I'm supposed to let the men lead, I'm not supposed to be outspoken and things like that. So what is your opinion about women like that?
First thing first, I think for women who memang identify themselves as um gentle, not outspoken, quote, like, submissive, and because it is who they are,
Mm,
that should be fine. I don't think we
mm,
should call it less internalized misogyny, because some people are just
mm,
like that, right?
mm, mm,
That's okay. But I think let's do the whole like women support women, right? There are so many types of women out there. So like, why must we only label the hijab with women of those certain qualities,
mm,
right? Does that
mm,
make me of a lesser hijabi for having opinions? Like,
mm.
does that make me, A, B, C, and D in the negative light? I
Yeah.
don't think that's fair, you know.
Mm,
So I think it's all about, um, just let's widen up that definition. Like, let's not
mm,
just keep to those stereotypes. And I think I'm
mm.
glad, like, actually, these days, oh come on, there's so many women like me. Honestly, like, it's just a
Yeah,
matter
yeah,
of
yeah, yeah.
it's just a matter of people who are not friends with enough hijabis to just talk to them,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
We're not
Mm,
some ethereal. We're just not like some elusive creatures that you're
mm,
stay away from. No,
mm.
like, talk to us. I promise you, we're not trying to convert you.
Mm,
We're
mm.
still trying to figure ourselves out. So like, just
Yeah,
let's just be friends.
yeah.
So yeah, that's my response to that.
Okay, right. No, I did not think you as an ethereal being, Young.
Damn you. Like, I like to think I'm ethereal. Okay. But yeah, I know what you
But
mean.
that's probably because, I grew up with a lot of hijabi friends, and I've seen super interesting characters, right? And
Mhm.
their personality was not defined by their hijab at all.
Of course, it's like macam I'm pretty sure you know some hijabis out there who are like so dirty, right? Like their mind is
Yeah.
so dirty. Like
Yeah.
it's just like okay, the only difference probably let's just keep it simple. Is that I can't eat pork, I don't drink, and I pray 5 times a day. That's it, right?
Mm-mm.
Like and satu I puasa. So it's like apart from that, I'm just a normal human being. I
Normal
enjoy
human
those.
being.
Yeah, I
Exactly.
enjoy those dirty jokes too. Like I find it
Mm,
funny. You know,
mm,
sometimes I'm guilty of making them too, making those
mhm,
kind of jokes too. Like we're just humans, you know. Like
mm,
it's like yeah lah. Like I also cannot say that it's entirely like non-Muslims' fault for being scared to approach us because look at what media has shown us. Like
mm.
with Malaysian media, it's always trying the politicians is always trying to separate us, right? So
Yeah,
like
yeah.
macam making the Malays feel like as if they are like they have more rights over the other people, and technically they do, unfortunately. But like making them feel like okay, us versus them. Using a lot of fear rhetoric to divide the group even further.
Hmm.
It sucks.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, but let's fight that. Let's start
Hmm.
sitting at the same table and just have a
Hmm.
conversation.
Yeah, I like to think that people who actually would listen to the politicians would be people who don't have any real life experience of having friends of outside their races. Because I think as someone who has grown up, I'm like, what are you talking about?
Hmm.
I don't get what you people are talking. I mean,
And
it's
usually, these people, the moment they meet another non-Muslim or non-Malay face to face,
mhm.
I dare you to say those things that you are supporting to
Exactly,
the non-Malay punya
exactly.
faces, because then you're
Yeah.
like, if you're a decent human being, you'll be like, okay, okay, this doesn't sit right. That's wrong. And then if
Mm,
they start developing a friendship, it's gonna be even
mhm.
harder and start gonna be confused.
Yes.
Right? They're gonna be like, okay,
Yeah.
I don't know how that policy that I supported, like, how is that gonna gel with my friend punya rights? Because I love my
Mm,
friend. So
yes.
then you start thinking. So
Mm. Yeah, I think
yeah.
at the end of the day, it's just about being friends and not try to be too homogeneous and, picking your friends based on race, and just try to be open and kind to one another.
Like okay, this is just like an observation. I find it very funny. Do you know how
Mm.
to know whether a person is not actually don't have a lot of diverse friends? So maybe
No.
it could be their first time. So one thing
Mm.
I find it funny, it happens on both like the Malay and non-Malay in this country. It's
Mm-hmm.
like one thing I notice, right? Kalau orang Melayu, right, kalau dia tak banyak kawan dengan orang bukan Melayu, when they're finally sitting at the same table and they're being friendly, I find it very cringy and funny when like the Malay person will try to speak like let's say it's a Chinese person and a Malay, and they will adopt like a accented Chinese like
Malay.
Malay in order to
Yeah.
communicate. And to me, Loki, for me, I cringe lah because I find it's a bit racist lah. But I also understand maybe that person because due to lack of exposure, they just feel like, okay, I'm just going to try to force some form of similarity or commonality between us so that we can communicate better. And they're probably panicking inside.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
I just want to be like a nice person, but I don't know. I'm afraid I might offend them, and vice versa,
Mm, mm.
right? Or maybe somehow like a second indicator would be like when they suddenly casually tiba-tiba brought up the topic of race in their exchange,
Right.
right? Okay, that's when
Yeah.
like maybe that
They'll be
person's
like
not
just, mm-hmm.
they're not like they're not so exposed enough to start forgetting, just like start forgetting about that person's race, just like how like
Yes.
amongst Muslims you look at the hijab, you don't really look at the hijab anymore, you know what I
Mm,
mean?
mm, mm,
Yeah. Yeah. So like, because there are sometimes like macam I find it, I feel like because I am so used to being the minority in my friend groups that
mm.
I really feel comfortable in those situations, that sometimes there was one time recently, okay lah, last year lah, that I actually sat down for a bit and I feel like, wait, do I actually realize that Tammy and Jane are like non like they are of a different race? Because I really forgot about it.
I
Like I look.
agree, because I've told to many of my Malay friends the same way. Like, I see you guys, I don't see you your tudung. I don't see your race. I don't see your tudung. I just see you as my friend.
It sounds
You
hella
know,
corny. I am gonna admit it
it
sounds
is
corny for
corny, but
saying
sometimes
the
it's like an epiphany, you know.
like I forgot like I don't know. I just don't think about it.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like
Mm,
only when we choose to talk about culture, that's when
mm.
like, oh yeah. But even then, I'm like, oh whatever. You know?
It's
Yeah.
almost like when we do have conversations about race and things like that, it's like it's three of us against everything else. It's more like we are
Yeah.
trying to find a third point of view.
Yeah. It's always and
Mm,
which is I mean, for me that's an idea of fun. But yeah, like, but like we're also open to the idea the fact that maybe most people are also not comfortable with to be in those sort of situation because
mm,
I think this is my guess lah. I think to them by being in such situations would actually trigger like them questioning about their own values and they're scared of
mm,
that.
yeah.
I'll say this lah. I don't get it lah. I tak faham lah. Why are you so scared about it?
Mm,
But yeah, then maybe that's a different podcast, honey. Yeah, yeah.
So Young just said, sorry, Jane just said plenty of opinionated hijabis on TikTok as well. And she has learned so much there. And thanks for sharing your story, Young.
You're welcome. I'll see you soon, Jane. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it's been an hour, Young. It's 1 hour, 5 minutes. And I
Mm-hmm.
think I've covered all my questions, but I love how candid this conversation
Damn
was.
you, damn you, Tammy, for making me cry. But okay, you're welcome.
I will never live this down.
Okay, yeah, I
This is
guess.
my achievement.
Yeah, I guess you made me cry. Congratulations. Yeah.
But yeah, but seriously, but it was such a, I mean, as a non-Muslim, right, I've always maybe wondered as to what would have been the internal struggles to be, wearing the hijab, because it's not an easy thing.
Mm,
People would think, oh, it's just an article of clothing, but it means a lot to the point that you can see the weight of it on bearing
mm,
on you, like when you and all those internal conflicts that you had because you didn't feel like wearing it at one point. So to be able to just explain and expressively saying that, what, at one point I didn't like it, I didn't want to wear it, it didn't gel with my personality. I think a lot of people would relate to that,
mm.
because it's not something that you can just switch in one day. For the first 10, 13 years of your life, you're free and not wearing the hijab, and then suddenly you're supposed to wear the hijab. You have to dress a certain way, you have to behave a certain way. But yeah, all women had to go through that. But because it has these religious connotations to it, it gets a bit more of a responsibility for you to carry as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think for me as a sign off message, I just want to say that, to the Muslims out there who are probably triggered by whatever I just shared. I'm just assuming here. It's just like, hey, don't be simple. All right? Like don't just because somebody struggles with certain aspects of their beliefs does not make them less of who they are as that
Mm,
believer. All right?
mm-hmm.
Be kind. That's all I have
Yeah.
to say. Yeah, be kind.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I suddenly got just reminded of the book that you were talking about, the first Muslim, and how
Mm,
even the Prophet had questions, had doubts.
yeah. And
So
it's you have to have questions in
it's
order to become
human.
better.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So thank you so much, Young.
Hey, thanks for having me. I had fun.
Do you have anything to plug in? I mean, like, you have a podcast, and the podcast is amazing. So you want to
Oh,
talk
thank
anything?
you. Right. So yeah, if you enjoy my babbles and you want to hear me more talk about different topics, you can find me at on Instagram at young people. So YANG dot period people PEOPLE. All right. You
Yeah.
can find Young People Podcast on Spotify and SoundCloud. And
Mm,
we are currently working on our fourth season that will be launching in June this year.
nice,
Yeah.
nice. Yeah. Right. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thanks for having me. I had fun. And I'll see you soon.
See you. Good night.
Good night. Bye.
Bye. Okay, and thank you very much, guys, for tuning in. And I hope you were enlightened and got connected with the story that Young shared as well. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe BKNR Resources YouTube channel, because you can find all the episodes, today's and the previous episodes, on that channel. And I'll see you in 2 weeks. Good night. Have a good weekend.